The story begins in a world where a single young man is facing an immense army. Him with a few wounds remembers the words of a young woman who told him, "I told you right. Do not look into the void when you are with others," and looking into the void he says in the present that he feels it. The army begins to attack the young man again, but him activate a mysterious power with a single stomp that generates a great destruction and annihilates everything around him, and at that moment we begin to tell his story. He was one day a fish swimming in a lake, another a bird flying through the skies, and in other days he was a small ant walking in a group, or a big dinosaur, from the heat of the eruption of a volcano until the flowers begin to bloom. He has lived and died thousands of times as different beings, remembering all his past lives. At one point, after having already lived thousands of different lives, he reincarnated as a big elephant. But at one point in his life, he is fatally shot by a hunter, and as his life is fading away, he says in his mind, "Again, I have been caught again." Millions of years of memories, and the only beings he feels hostility towards are humans. Every time I reach the end of my life, being killed and consumed by a stronger being was a fact. That was the natural way of how things worked, and I was fine with that. However, these beings take the lives of others for pleasure or fun. The methods they use are countless and are constantly being improved, which makes countermeasures irrelevant. In thousands of my lives I was killed by them. Even though death was nothing to me, I still felt hatred towards them. Death is coming. Millions of years of life. Every time I approach death's door I have these questions. What kind of being I'm going to reborn this time? Why do I have the ability to be reborn, and when will all this end? Please, I don't want to reborn again. Even having the great desire to end the endless cycle. Its rebirth process begins and says at the same time, and so my new life begins again. The pain of birth is if my whole body is being crushed. For this pain I am sure this time I am a mammal. After all my past experiences I have never felt such a great pain. This pain is making me excited for this life. According to my past experiences, more pain means better chances to be at the top of the food chain. And at that moment he comes back to life and opens his eyes in the arms of his new mother and says in his mind as he watches her, "I'm asked how much time has passed in this life." Although my vision was blurry, I could distinguish her immediately. The only beings I feel hostility towards. I was reborn as a human. This little young man was named Lee Jane by his mother named Oh Youngs. Time goes by, and at a young age his mother took Lee Jane to a hospital. He, who had lived millions of lives, thought that for the first time he had a name, and that the life of humans is complicated. That although they are all alive they draw distinctions between country and races. Besides, they name everything in the world and give sense to everything. The doctor that they went to see tells Lee Jane's mother that all the tests that they did were normal, so the mother, a little confused, asks why her son does not speak. The doctor tries to give her an explanation, telling her that he is only 6 years old, that it may still be early for him. The mother, unsatisfied with the explanation and a little angry, tells the doctor that is not the problem. Even if she tried to talk to him, he barely shows response. He did not even cry when he was born. The doctor, seeing that he does not have any physical problem, raises the possibility that it is something psychological and proposes to take him to a psychiatrist. Youngs, hearing this, gets up from his seat and says, "A psychiatrist? To that hospital for the insane? Are you trying to say that my son is insane?" The doctor tries to restrain the woman, and Lee Jane says in his mind, "My mother is idiot and ignorant. She lost her family in the war, and not long after she lost her husband in another war. For her the world was too hard and cruel. However, she has this block of blood she had to take care of. In order to survive, she put me on her back and sold vegetables in the local market." Time progressed, and as the evening came, Youngs rested with her son. She once heard that babies would grow properly if they listened to people talk politely. So despite the lack of response, Youngs constantly told her son, "I love you." Jane did not understand what she was saying, but that warm feeling, Jane did not hate it. However, Jane, who could not fall asleep, he affirmed that in this life there is an obvious difference. At the same time, near Jane, a man is being chased by a group of officers. He ends up stumbling and tells the men to please let him live. But one of them sinisterly tells him, "What did you say? How can I let a communist live?" The desperate man replies that he is not to please believe him. But the officer, without giving relevance to his words, tells him that they can talk about it later, to get up immediately. Otherwise he will have to drag him back. However, at that precise moment, Jane appears on top of a pole, calling the attention of the men. One of the officers, a little bit confused at first, tells him that it is dangerous to be up there, to come down now. But Jane, without saying words, says in his mind, observing them, "Human beings, I thought it would be perfect to test it." Frog makes a big jump and falls in front of everyone present. However, Jane moves at great speed towards the men while saying leopard. And just before hitting one of them, he says Argentinosaurus. And with a powerful attack, he knocks down one of the officers and ends his life. His companions, who could not even react to the movements of the young man, shout at him with anger and fear, asking who the hell he is. To which Jane looks at them smiling and says in his mind, yes, he was sure, an ability he had never had before. all beings like the ones he had lived before. I was born with all their abilities and each one of their capacities. Why? I do not know, however. It has become clear to me the end of my long journey. This life is my last life. I can finally die. The officer who stood up to the boy wastes no time and pounces, hitting him. Jane falls to the floor a little hurt, and while he gets up he says in his mind, "That hurt, but I'm not going to manifest nothing. I am like a normal human." The boy looks at the officer with a look that makes him tremble. The officer throws another blow. However, Jane using turtle causes the man to injure his hand, and at that very moment he takes him by the neck using chimpanzee and says in his mind, preparing a blow to end his life, "As long as I manifest them I can do anything." However, at that precise second Jane is pierced by a shot from the man who is being chased, and as he collapses to the floor he says he made a mistake. The man who shot him leaves the place with a great fear on his face, and the officer who was still standing leaves after him. Time moves forward on the next morning. Jane, wounded but regained consciousness, says in his mind looking at the sky, "I was hit by that thing again. It hurts, it pierced my internal organs. Am I going to die?" And looking at the sunrise he is about to take his last breath. However, his survival instinct unconsciously activates sea cucumber and regenerates the damaged tissue, healing it completely. Jane, contemplating this fact, says in his mind, "Damn my survival instinct. I thought I had nothing left to experience." But that was interesting. The fact that this little body has stability makes no sense. Well, I guess that's how things are, and at that precise moment he is able to hear the screams of his mother, who desperately keeps calling his name. Without paying attention to her, he moves at great speed towards a bird and devours it in one bite and says in his mind, "I may not be fully grown yet, but I can hunt by myself. There is no longer a reason for me to be with her." In the same way, when he says this, he remembers the words his mother told him, manifesting a little doubt in his face. But even so, he moves away from his home. Time goes by, and 4 days later Jane, in a terrible state, fall ill and says in his mind, "My whole body is hot, and my stomach is upset. Is the food the problem? I thought I was an omnivore. What's the problem? Even after millions of lives I have never felt this feeling before. Death, it's okay, I have no regrets." If this really is the end, however, just at that moment Jungs finds him. He is unable to contain his emotions. He rushes in tears and hugs her with much love. Jane at that moment says in his mind, "I thought I was about to die, but my thoughts started to clear. I am hungry. I want to eat the food this human makes. It is so noisy. How long will she cry? Stop that and give me food." At that moment Jane thought it would be better to do than seem to cry, and decided to speak human words he didn't understand. The same words Jungs always said to him with a smile, and looking at his mother fixedly he said, "I love you." However, unlike what Jane believed, his mother started to cry even harder and thought at that instant, looking at the horizon, that the sunset that day was really beautiful, concluding that he wants to stay like that for a little longer until he can become independent. Also concluding that he will try to lead a human life. They both went back home together and went back to live their life. At the same time, the man who shot Jane tells what happened to the police, claiming that he killed that boy, but the officer who is interrogating him doesn't believe the story, stressing that the only body that was at the scene was of the officer who died from the young man's blow. The desperate man asks the officer who was strangled by the young man, why doesn't he say anything? That he saw what happened and that he shot the boy to save him. But the officer coldly says, "Do you really believe the words of that communist? Why do you take him seriously? I'm tired. Just end the conversation and take care of him." The man, who sees that no one supports him, starts to cry, shouting to let him go, that the detective was killed by that child and that he shot that monster. The man is removed from the scene, and the officer reflects about the words he said. On the other hand, time progressed a little, and since that day Jungs always held her son's hand for fear of losing him again. Jane at that time claimed that because his mother's smile and what she did for him, he did not hate her, but for that very reason he thought that this could become dangerous. Both together lived their life as time progressed. Jane started school, and it did not take long for some children to bother him. But his mother, like a fierce, protected him, scolding the teacher who thought that fights were normal at that age, and threatening the children that if they dared to raise their hand again against her son she would crush their hands and wrists. Jane, looking at this scene, thought that his mother was only kind to him. Also seeing that the older ladies in the neighborhood started to talk bad about her son because he didn't talk and had an empty look, Jungs confronted them on the spot, putting them in their place. Later, an administrative employee tried to evict her from her workplace. The man claimed it was administrative matters of the country, but Jungs, without being intimidated, said to him, "What has this country done for us? My father was shot dead, and I became an orphan. My husband died in the same way, and I became a widow, and now you want to take my place. I have been working here since my son was still in my stomach. Who do you think you are?" And throwing himself on the floor, she continues saying, "If you force me to move my son and I will starve to death. I won't move. Just kill me instead. If you don't plan to kill me, then go away." Jungs constantly fought against the world, and time passed in this way. Jane had finally got used to the body and lifestyle of a human. One day in a flower field, his mother held out her hand and told Jane to go and get something to eat at home. He took his mother's warm but strong hand and they started to walk, and he realized that the thing he was looking for when he thought it was time to leave happened, and looking at his mother he asked her, "Why are you fighting?" To which his mother replied, "To protect you." Hearing those words as they were heading home, Jane said in his mind, "What I was worried about happened. I don't want to leave. I want to spend more time with Jungs." Both happily continued their journey. However, behind them the officer who was wounded by the young man sees them and says ominously, "I found you, monster." Jane always thought of survival of the fittest. The weak become the food of the strong. This applies to any being in this world. Once you become part of this circle, everyone understands it instantly. However, there are deaths he did not understand. To die for a heat stroke, to endure the cold, to innovate, to bring money, sometimes to decorate, sometimes even for boredom. It is unfortunate. That is why there is only one thing left: rebellion. Time moves forward, and 12 years after Jane was reborn, he is collecting food in a stream. While he is heading home, he says that he is used to human society. But in recent years his neighborhood has changed rapidly. The roads are straight and the buildings are taller. They even built a factory next to the river of his house. Upon his arrival he finds his mother on the floor and says Jungs has fallen sick. At that time we are shown a flashback where a few days ago Jai, while they were eating, spit out the food instinctively. His mother told him that this is a hard-to-get delicacy, not to be picky and eat it all, but Jane seriously replied that he won't eat. His mother was surprised and told him then don't eat it. She will finish it and he'll misses it. Coming back to the present while taking care of his mother, he says in his mind that he should have prevented her from eating that fish, understanding now that it was contaminated by the factory waste. He gives her the basic care and leaves under the pretext of going to school. His mother looked at him smiling and told him to have fun. However, Jane actually went to sell food to the market, and while observing the merchandise he says in his mind, they destroy everything for their comfort, even if that comfort causes pain to others. But why did Jungs have to suffer? At that moment a man appears in front of him and takes an apple and quickly bites it and asks him the price. The young man tells him 10 won, to which the man replies that it is very expensive, but it tastes good, and at that precise moment the young man looks the man in the eyes and realizes that he is the officer who escaped him alive, and says without changing his expression in his mind, everyone is different from the others, and to keep the peace the human society created laws to build boundaries. Before he had broken the only law that no one should, murder, the officer in front of the young man seriously tells him, "I planned to visit you before, but I wanted to observe you. I wanted to see how a monster was growing. Let me ask you something. Why are you pretending to be a human?" Jane gives him no answer and the officer tells his men to take him away. Jane, seeing that he let them handcuff him without resistance, asks him if it is okay to leave this way, that he is being investigated for espionage. The man, seeing that the young man is still undeterred, smiling deviously, tells him, "Then if you are a spy, your mother is also a spy. We have already sent people to look for her. She is not in a good health situation. I wonder if she can stand the investigation. The investigation of espionage is quite hard." These words generate a great change in Jane, and the man who noticed it tells 2 of his men to move away, that they could die if they stay there, and at that precise moment the whole floor under them begins to fracture, and faster than a blink of an eye the young man destroys the handcuffs and runs out of the place at high speed. All the men under the command of the officer ask him what happened, and he answers them that if they don't understand, that this boy is a monster. On the other hand, Jane, who is on his way home, says in his mind while releasing a great power, "That human who called me a monster, he underestimated me. I can become anything." And that day Jane became a disaster. At the same time, one of the officer's colleagues who first witnessed Jane is questioned about why he did not try to stop his colleague after he mobilized so many people for an operation of a supposed 12-year-old spy boy, using his influence, which is extremely improbable. To which the man, remembering the young man, replies trembling that it was because he was afraid. On the other hand, a few minutes after escaping from the authority, Jane arrives home a little agitated. A group of men who are there to arrest his mother wonder where he came from, and after confirming that he is the boy who lives in the house, they have their doubts about what his companion said. But anyway, they plan to take him to investigate. Jane, seeing that they just want to take him, is about to destroy them all. However, at that moment his mother comes out of the house. She asks them what is going on, but when she sees that they are holding her son, even though she is in a terrible state, she gets up and starts yelling at them to let him go. Seeing that the men do not pay attention to her and that she is surrounded, she starts screaming at the top of her lungs for help, claiming that they are kidnapping her son. The officers at first try to stop her with words, but seeing that she does not listen to them, one of them hits her in the face and tells her to shut up, communist. Jane, who witnesses her mother being wounded and falling to the ground, began to tremble, feeling a great shiver along with an immense rage bubbling inside him, and so at that instant he completely abandoned his sanity. Everything went dark before his eyes, and a few seconds after, and when he came back to his senses, he was standing around all the bodies of the officers. His mother, who saw what happened, looks at him saying his name in tears, and Jane, seeing her, says in his mind, "Again, I did it again." At that moment, the officer in a vehicle arrives laughing and says in front of all his men, "Bingo! What did I tell them? I told them he was a monster. Don't go easy on him or you will die just like the others." Jane clenches his fist, seeing that he has no choice but to liquidate everyone. However, just before he attacked, Jung stands up in front of him and shouts, "I killed them. I did it. Take me. My son did nothing. It's all my fault." The officers were shocked for a minute seeing this scene. Jane, seeing this, thought that his mother, who did not even have energy to eat, was screaming with all her strength, and at that moment he remembers the words of his mother, that she fights to protect him, and seeing that she is doing it right now in this situation, unable to contain his emotions and with a great pain in his chest, begins to cry uncontrollably. The officer contemplates the young man crying behind the mother, who does not stop screaming, and draws his gun and points in the direction of the mother's ankle. While he says, "Let's see," the man without hesitation shoots against the woman. But before the bullet touches her, moving at a great speed, Jane protects his mother. He looks at the man with a great seriousness, and the officer, smiling, tells his men that he knew it and to please shoot against the woman. They at first had their doubts, but the officer, asking them if they want to end up like his companions, makes them follow his order, and they all shoot against Jane's mother. Jane, seeing the large amount of bullets in the direction of his mother, says with a determined look in his mind, "I can do it. I have to do it. Every life I have lived to its end, and using superhuman reflexes and the resistance of an armadillo to its end." Protects his mother from all the bullets. He is a little wounded in the process, and the officer, shocked to see that he is still standing as if nothing, shouts to his men that he is a monster and to continue shooting if they do not want to die. Jane, seeing that he is in a drastic situation, says in his mind, "Well, it is inevitable." Once again, however, at the precise moment when he is going to counterattack to liquidate all his enemies, his mother stands in front of him and hugs him, and just before receiving all the bullets, tells her son that she loves him. She receives all the shots and falls to the ground. Jane, shocked, observes her, and his mother with her last strength caresses him with one hand. He remembers all the moments they were together, and his mother takes off from him, giving her last breath. A great silence is produced in the area, and in a completely white area, Junks opens her eyes, wondering where she is, and next to her she observes Jane crying oceans next to her. She, smiling, says to her son, "You didn't cry even when you were a baby. Why are you crying so much now?" He, in tears, asks her forgiveness, that he is very sorry, stating that he does not know what to do and wonders why he has these powers, and if he only had known this would happen. However, his mother interrupts, hugging him, and says, "'Tis okay. Do not worry. The fact that you were born as my son is the greatest thing that has happened to me, is what I am thankful for." Jane replies that he will accompany her soon, but his mother seriously tells him, "Mom wants to tell you something, Jane. Whatever happens to you, no matter what you need to do or the way, you must live at that moment in the real world." Jane, treasuring his mother's words, stands up in tears. The officer, seeing the great intensity Jane emanates, stands frozen, and we are posed the question why this man was so obsessed with him. There were many answers, but the real answer was simple: pride. Humans pride themselves on their ability to understand the world around them and fear things they don't understand. That's why he tried to end things. Jane claims he can't coexist with humans, that he could even hurt and kill someone else. But remembering his mother's words to live, he says that it is okay. He is going to live, and without stopping crying, he leaves his mother's body behind and starts to run. At the same time, before taking a great distance, he looks at the officer with a look full of anger. Before this, he gets agitated and shouts to his men to start chasing him, emphasizing that now he is weak and it is his last chance to catch him. The young man runs a long distance under the pursuit of the authority, but after getting far away from the city, when crossing the field of flowers that he ran with his mother, he stops. The officer shouts to the young man that if he has finished running, and asks him if he does not want to do it a little more. However, Jane, wiping his tears, answers him, "Run. I couldn't do what is about to happen back there. Mom would get hurt if I did. I'm sorry. The people I killed before, the people I killed today, just like all of you here, you all must have had a mother too. There must be someone who loves you out there, and someone you love, just like me." The man, trying to hide his nerves, replies that for a child he speaks quite well, and Jane continues, "I clearly understand that I have done something wrong, but that also applies to you. They kill without remorse. You destroy and ruin everything. I have always questioned it. Why was I reborn over and over again? Why did I get these powers? But finally I understand now. I was born to lead you all, you useless humankind, to extinction." The young man releases his power, making his opponents tremble, and with a powerful jump with which he fractures the ground, he rises to a great height, and as fast as a missile he launches himself in the direction of all his adversaries. These try to dodge him, but they are unable to do it. The attack of the young man generates a great destruction and ends the lives of several of them. The officer, who is about to die under a rock, looks at the young man and says, "I knew it. I was right. You have to die. Monsters like you can't exist in our world. Jane, calmly approaching him to finish him, answers, yes, you're right, you should have killed me. However, you have failed, and in return all humans in this world, until the last of them, will feel my wrath. The man screams, and in one move the young man ends his life. Time moves on, and at nightfall Jane, who went to look for his mother's body, began to walk without stopping. It could have been because he was tired, but he began to hear Young's words that he should not have to be able to. Those words that she told him thousands of times in remembering all their life together. He answers her while he goes into the darkness. Me too. After calming his mind and giving his mother a proper rest, Jane is walking towards the horizon while remembering the happiest moments of his life. He says in his mind with a great sadness, the years I spent with Mom felt like an instant compared to the millions of years I already experienced. But that instant meant everything to me. I felt an infinite love that I had never had before. I felt an infinite happiness. However, my mother is no longer here. She died because of me. Neither life nor death were ever so painful for me. But remembering her mother's words that he should live, he says out loud that he is fine and moves forward without any fixed destination. Time moves on, and around a mountain, a hunter who is watching his prey manages to shoot it down and cheerfully goes to look for it. However, next to the fallen animal, Jane is standing staring. The hunter, seeing him as he approaches, says to the young man, "Boy, how did you get here? These hunting grounds are dangerous. Is this your first time seeing a pheasant?" "It's my first time in a while seeing one this big." Hearing those words, Jane is preparing to kill it and looks with a great thirst for blood and answers him, "Are you proud?" However, the man very calmly asks him about where his parents are. These words produce a change in Jane, making him calm down, and he answers the man that they are dead. The man, listening to him and looks at him sadly and putting his coat on the young man, says, "It's winter. Aren't you cold? Why are you wearing a short sleeve? Let's go to my house for now." Jane's eyes fill with light seeing the actions of this person with him, and for this he follows him without protesting. Both walk a little and arrive at the hunter's house. He sees that his mother is outside in the cold and greets her, announcing his return, and tells her to come in. This family gives a warm and friendly welcome to Jane. They give him a hot bath to rest his body and remove the bad smell he has for being a long time without bathing, and then all eat together the soft meat of the pheasant. The hunter, seeing that Jane does not eat anything, and he asks him if he is not hungry. At that moment a great roar is heard that calls the attention of the young man. The hunter tells him that there is a construction in the mountain around here, which apparently is a kind of luxury hotel, and changing the subject, curious, asks him what brings him to the mountain. Jane, starting to eat, replies that he was just walking around there. The man, very empathetic, contemplating his situation, tells him, "Anyway, there is nothing here. It is not the best place for a child to live either. Let's go to the village sometime tomorrow. I will ask the town chief to find someone to take care of you. You need to go to school." Jane, concentrating only on the food, doesn't pay much attention to the hunter, to which he gives him a small and soft touch on the head. This unsettles the young man, and the hunter continues saying, smiling, "And at school, make sure you learn how to speak to your elders respectfully. Understood, boy?" Jane does not utter a word and just watches him intrigued. Time goes by and they all go to sleep together. Jane, without falling asleep, observes the ceiling, admiring how warm this place is. They also contemplate a few photographs of the family. The young man, who has lived thousands of lives, manages to fall asleep, and the next morning, this family gives Jane new clothes. The man, seeing that the clothes are a little big, folds them to make it more comfortable and tells his mother that he'll be back. They both start their way to a nearby village. She only dismissed him with her hand, and after a few steps Jane says to the hunter, "Your mother does not speak." The hunter shakes his hair a little and smiling answers, "What's wrong with you, little boy? You know how to address your elders, don't you?" Jane grits his teeth a little, and the man continues, She can't hear you." To which Jane asks him why he keeps talking to her if she can't hear him. And the hunter says, "Even without words, I know that my feelings reach out to her. That's all that matters to me." Jane is left pondering as he listens to him, and a few minutes later a big rain begins. The hunter, worried about getting sick, opts to go look for shelter. They both walk and are about to take cover from the rain. However, at the top of the mountain next to them, in a construction zone that left a whole area in a terrible state, a big landslide occurs and ends up crushing the hunter. The man, who can barely breathe, asks Jane, who was saved by very little, if he is well. He quickly begins to remove the earth on him and tells him to just hold on for a moment, that he will get him out soon. But the hunter, saying weakly, "Mom." Jane contemplates this scene, and a second later, looking at the sky, he says in his mind, "There was a construction on the mountain next door. He should have said it. It is still raining." The young man removes the hunter's body and carries it back to his home. When he arrives, Jane is not able to look into the eyes of the shocked mother. Time goes on, and after the storm passed, Jane, remembering his massacres, says in his mind, "I was really angry with all the people in the world. I wanted to finish with each one. I still think about doing it, but now I have doubts because I don't know what is the right thing to do. At that moment he has a flashback where his mother tells him about a bad grade in an exam. What is this? Do you want to be like me? Jane replied that he couldn't solve it because he didn't know. That's why he didn't leave any answer. Young's very serious told her son, if you don't know you still have to solve the problem. If you don't know the answer, just write something. Jane continued telling her that he doesn't know. But coming back to the present, he looked at the sky and decidedly moved to one direction. On the other hand, the building that was being constructed is inaugurated and many people gather for the occasion, and the one who seems to be the owner who orchestrated everything observes a child approaching and notifies one of his security guards. He is confused and asks him, is there no security at the entrance? What are you doing on an important day like this? Not just anyone can enter. His employee tells him that he will go and get him out right now. The guard quickly runs and intercepts the young man, clarifying that he cannot come to this area and asks him to please leave. But looking behind the young man, he observes the fallen bodies of many of his classmates. Jane, in front of the man, remembers the talk with his mother regarding the exam and what she at the end told him when he was still locked out. If you don't know the answer, alleviate. You can make a mistake. Write what you want. To which, with his fist stained with blood, he says in his mind, I don't know if I should write what I want. But getting firm, taking a stance, he says to the guard invaded by fear in front of him, I will not hesitate anymore. I will kill them all. The truth is that I wanted to do it. And that's how the first part of this man wins.